You can speak well if you can deliver the message of your heart. These words by John Ford capture what I believe to be the essence of excellent public speaking. We have already talked a lot about how public speaking is powerful. It's your opportunity to get on a platform and communicate your messages to the world. So today we will begin a journey kind of exploring how to build a great presentation. And where we need to start is by addressing some of the butterflies that may already be flying around and doing a little song and dance in your stomach. These butterflies are what we call speech anxiety or communication apprehension. When they are flying around, when we're about to give a presentation or during the middle of our presentation, it comes out in ways like our heart beating really fast, or our words getting fumbled up with one another, or speaking too quickly. We also might have some sporadic and strange movements that we seem to think, oh, I don't know why my arm is doing this. I don't want it to do that at all. This is really speech anxiety. It's kind of the fear of public speaking, and most of us have somewhat of a fear of public speaking. So today I want to talk with you about how can you make those butterflies work for you rather than against you. So let's first talk a little bit about communication apprehension. Communication apprehension is an individual's fear or anxiety that they experience when communicating with other people. And specifically, we're looking at the context of public speaking. So how much communication apprehension do you have, or the desire to not get up and speak when you're asked to give a presentation? Each of you has taken the pre-PRCA. This is an assessment that tries to find out how comfortable you feel communicating in a variety of different environments. It includes one-on-one as well as working in groups, and then of course, public speaking. If you've scored anywhere between 24 and 50, this means that you have a low level of communication apprehension, or you really don't feel very nervous getting up and giving a presentation. You are the lucky few. If you scored anywhere between 50 and 80, then this means that you have maybe moderate amounts of speech anxiety. Perhaps you feel comfortable talking one-on-one with others and participating also in groups, but perhaps you do feel a little nervous when you are up here in front of the audience and everyone is looking at you, waiting for you to deliver an excellent presentation. The last category is those that have scored anywhere between 80 and 120 points. This represents a group of people that feel very anxious about communicating. My goal for you is to give you some tips and tricks to really help you reduce that speech anxiety. So first, let's talk a little bit about some truths about speech anxiety. First of all, you're going to feel more nervous than you look. There are several studies that actually assess whether or not audience members can accurately pick out if a speaker is nervous. Guess what? Audience members are only right about 50% of the time. You will know just how nervous that you feel, but we honestly will not be able to tell as much as you actually think we will. So take courage. You don't look as nervous as you actually feel. In addition, you can't make speech anxiety go away, unfortunately. Even the best public speakers with excellent skills as well as years of experience will still tell you that they feel some of those butterflies flying around in their stomach when they are asked to give a presentation. The key here, though, is that you want to make those butterflies work for you rather than against you. And that's another truth about communication apprehension. It's not a bad thing to have a little bit of heightened awareness that you want to perform well and that you really want to give an excellent presentation. You just want to make sure that you're using that energy and channeling it in a very effective way. You see, when we are asked to give speeches and when we stand up here, our body responds to the need for us to perform. There's a heightened sense of awareness that we need to perform well, and so our body actually tries to help us to do that by producing more adrenaline. That's what gives us that fight or flight sensation of, do I want to fly out of this room and get out of here and run away from public speaking, or will I stay and fight this challenge? Our body really does want to help us, but oftentimes that comes out in some of our nervous tics, and we want to make sure we reduce and minimize those tics, but that we still have a few butterflies flying around because we want to harness that energy and use it to help us to be passionate and energetic and charismatic and focused when we give our presentations. So you might be wondering, just how common is speech anxiety? Interestingly enough, a study was done in the 1990s assessing how common is speech anxiety and what are people's greatest fears. Especially for Americans, where do you think that communication anxiety ranked in accordance with even experiencing death? Well, you've got it right. In the words of Jerry Seinfeld, it's a little crazy that most of us actually fear public speaking more than we do death. So that means if we are going to a funeral, most of us would actually prefer being in the casket to giving the eulogy. I love that joke because I think it captures how we really feel about public speaking. What these surveys have revealed is that 80% of the population really do feel speech anxiety when they get up to give a presentation. That means that only 20% of people don't necessarily feel that anxiety. So if you are feeling anxious about your speech, or you're feeling like you don't really want to give a presentation, take heart that you're the majority. Most of us are going to feel a range of anxiety when we give our presentations. So let's talk about what we can do before our speeches to help reduce that anxiety and make it work for us. First of all, one thing I will encourage you all to do is to choose a topic that you know a lot about and that you are passionate about. This is really important for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you choose something that you have already done a lot of research on, that you find interesting, and so you find yourself reading about it or learning about it, kind of in your own spare time or your free time, this is going to give you a lot of confidence on the day of the speech. You are the expert. In addition, if it's something that you're passionate about and interested to speak on, that's going to help you overcome some of your fears because you're excited to talk about and share with others some of your passions. This is an incredibly important step, and I want to share with you an experience that I had a couple of years ago with a student. In this particular class, my students were asked to choose an organization that they'd like to work for, learn about it, and then inform us about that organization. So I had one young woman who went back and forth on a couple of topics and finally settled on AT&T. And she was an excellent speaker. She had a lot of natural skill and had already given a couple of speeches in my class. So when it came time for her to deliver that presentation, she was incredibly anxious and nervous. And I asked her, hey, what's going on? She shared with me that she had spent all of her time just learning the information. So she didn't have any time to really think about how she would organize it, nor did she have any time to practice. So she was feeling incredibly underprepared, and really she didn't care. She found through her research that it wasn't something she was excited to talk on. So how is she going to get her audience excited to hear about it? This is why I want to encourage you, choose topics that you're already an expert in, that you already know lots of stuff about, and that you're passionate about. Also, I ask my students at the end of each semester to write a letter to a future speech student. Tell us some advice that would help the future students be really successful. Guess what their number one bit of advice always is? It's prepare, prepare, prepare beforehand. Do not procrastinate. And they're right. Nothing will cause your nerves to overcome you more than if you don't feel prepared. So make sure that as we kind of go through this speech writing process, you really stay on top of yourself and make sure that you're following each of the steps. It will really pay off when we finally get to speech day. You also want to make sure that you're spending equal amounts of time in all of the categories or in all of the processes of writing a speech. So you really want to spend equal time researching your topic and gathering good supportive material. But you also want to make sure that you save time to structure that speech. Think about how you're going to logically present the information. And lastly, one thing that a lot of speakers do is they run out of time to practice. But this is really important. You're going to work hard to prepare your plan, but it's just as important to spend the same amount of time practicing the plan, communicating the plan, speaking it out. And I want to encourage you to do that. So if you had a week to plan a speech, I would encourage you to spend 2 days researching, 2 days thinking about the structure and the organization of the speech, and then 2 days really practicing that presentation. That will help you feel very prepared and confident on the day of the speech. That brings me to my next point, the importance of practice. Another thing that will help reduce your anxiety is practice, practice, practice. You have got to spend some time really speaking your speech out loud, treating it like it's the real thing. This is going to do a couple things for you. If you actually speak the speech, it's going to reinforce the structure and the key points and the words in your mind. So it's kind of like muscle memory, much like an athlete would experience or a performer would experience. The more that you repeat an action, the more that it becomes natural to you. So you want to do that with your presentations also. My recommendation is to have 3 dress rehearsals where you either share your speech in front of the mirror to yourself, or perhaps you can get some audience members from your family or from your friends, and you want to treat it just like it's the real deal. Don't stop, don't make changes, just try to keep going even when you hit a bump or when you hit a point where you're not sure what you should say next. This will really help you practice and prepare for what it's like to speak in front of a live audience. I would also encourage you, if it's helpful, to use note cards. You'll prepare a speech outline that's quite detailed, but you don't want to take that up to the front with you. That will be very overwhelming to have all of that information in front of you. So instead, you should prepare a very short phrase note card that prompts you from point to point. I would also recommend numbering these note cards. When we're nervous and when we're practicing, we may get up to the podium and realize, oh, the card that's on top is definitely not my introduction, and I have no idea where this one belongs. So if you simply have those numbers in front of you, it's easier to put it back in order, and it's a quick fix to keep you from feeling too anxious. You also want to make sure that you're practicing with your visual aid. If you're going to do a demonstration, you should actually practice by doing the demonstration so you know how long each step will take, and maybe if there's any trouble areas that give you a problem or make you feel like it's going too long. If you're using a PowerPoint, go ahead and flip through the slides as you practice your presentation. This will help you check and make sure that you do have everything in order the way that you want it, and that what you have on the screen really reflects the message that you're communicating. And it supports your verbal message. I would also encourage you to know your introduction and your conclusion very, very well. This is important because sometimes it's hard to know how to get started. You may know a lot about your topic, but what are you supposed to say first? So really have that introduction down. And then lastly, when you're ready to finish up and sit down and you're ready to get to that chair, if we don't plan beforehand what you're going to say to finish the speech, that can actually cause a little bit of anxiety as well, and kind of end the speech abruptly. So know your introduction and conclusion backwards and forwards. They should be something that you could say at the drop of a hat. The last thing I really want to encourage you to do before your presentation is I want you to visualize success. You can do this. All of the great athletes, they would give you this advice. If you are going to be performing, you have to visualize positively how successful you're going to be. Don't think about failure. Don't think about how you don't like how you look when you give this speech, or you don't think you're going to remember what you will need to say. You want to focus on the positive, and that's really going to help bolster your confidence for the day of your presentation. So these are some things that you can do beforehand. Make sure that you are working hard and not procrastinating. Make sure that you are practicing exactly how you want that speech to go. And lastly, visualize success. So now let's talk about what we're going to do on the day of the speech. This is a very important day, and it's likely the day that you'll feel the highest amount of speech anxiety. First of all, you want to dress to impress. Okay? The more that if you wear something that you feel confident in, that's going to come through in your nonverbal communication, and it's going to give you a sense of confidence. My recommendation is to wear something that's just a teeny bit more formal than the audience that you're speaking to. This will kind of give you the confidence that you are the expert and you do know what you're talking about. Okay? In addition, you do have extra energy in your body, so think about some ways that you can get rid of it. If you show up to your presentation early, perhaps you can walk around in the halls a little bit before the actual event begins. If you're sitting at your seat or at the table waiting for your turn, you might just want to squeeze your feet, okay, or squeeze your toes together, or squeeze the sides of the chair. It's going to help you get rid of a little bit of that extra energy so that you have just enough when you get up to give your presentation. You also want to practice physically relaxing your body. This is something that I actually do right before I begin a lesson or a lecture, or right before I give a talk. I'm kind of an anxious soul anyways, so I have had to learn how to relax my body so I can sleep at night. And this exercise is really useful for speakers as well. You really want to imagine the tension kind of leaving all of your muscles, and take a deep breath. and physically relaxing your body. It's a technique that's worked a lot for me, so I encourage you to try it. Most importantly, you want to give yourself a mental pep talk. These pep talks are something that you perhaps did when you were playing sports in high school or giving an excellent theatrical performance or dance performance. This is just as much important for giving a public speech as well. You want to communicate to yourself positive messages. I can do this. I know this information. I've worked hard, okay? We as people tend to predict either success or failure, and then we actually act out ways to make that success or failure happen. What you don't want to do is say, I'm so nervous, I'm not going to do good, I'm going to look like a fool up there. Because what we found through research is that people actually then, because they don't believe in themselves, they act that way, even though they don't have to. So you want to preach to yourself messages of positivity. You can do this, it's only 5 minutes of your life, and you're going to do awesome. Now, when you're up here, if you feel like you need some confidence, you're struggling and you're getting a little nervous again, what you need to do is find your friendly face. Find somebody in the audience that gives you a warm smile and is making eye contact and maybe gives you a nice head nod to encourage you that you're doing a great job. The truth is that your audience is rooting for you. Nobody in the audience wants a speaker to feel embarrassed or to not do a good job. So find that person that's showing you that support non-verbally and get a little boost of confidence from them. Lastly, what you want to do is you want to, and this is something my mom always taught me, be an actress. Fake confident until you feel confident. So you may not feel confident as you walk up to the podium, but I want you to act it, okay? Because it's going to send that message to the audience that you are credible and you are confident and you should be up here speaking. And again, it's sending a positive message to yourself that you do know what you're doing and that you are a competent communicator. So these are some things that you can do on speech day. You want to dress well because it's going to help you feel good. You also want to get rid of a little bit of that excess energy that you've definitely got flowing around through your body. And you also want to speak encouragingly to yourself. Tell yourself that you can do it. If you will work hard at the beginning to prepare an excellent message, practice, 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 and speak positively to yourself, these are going to be some things that help you to harness the extra energy that's running around in your body and to help you to deliver an excellent presentation. So now that we've talked about the feelings of speech anxiety, let's get down to the nitty-gritty, some basics of public speaking. Now these principles I'm going to share with you seem very basic, but there's something I want you to always come back to as you prepare your own speeches. Specifically, I want to talk with you a little bit about the types of presentations that you can give, the 3 parts of every single presentation, no matter how formal or informal the presentation is. And then I'd also like to speak with you a little bit about the 3 dimensions of every speech and how each one is important. So let's begin with the types of presentations. The first type of speech that we will study in this class is called an informative presentation. And just like the name sounds, the goal of that presentation is to inform. You will put on a teacher's hat. Your job is to teach the audience something that you know more about than they do. It could be about someone that you find incredibly inspirational and you want to teach about what they've done in their life. It could be something practical like how to change a tire. Either way, your goal is to help your audience understand your topic better than before you began to speak. That's different, though, from a persuasive speech. In a persuasive speech, the main goal is to either change or reinforce the audience's attitudes, beliefs, values, and behavior. Now, what I see a lot of students do on accident is in their informative speeches, they find that they're becoming very persuasive. They're trying to get their audience to do something, or to believe something, or to buy into something. And then when we get to the persuasive speech, they find that it's really more informative. They've given the audience a lot of great information, but they really lack a specific call to action. They lack telling the audience what they want them to do now in response to the information that they've presented. So as you prepare your speeches, I want you to ask yourself during the informative presentation, am I really teaching them stuff they don't know? And in the persuasive speech, am I really giving them a clear call to action, some kind of behavior or action I want them to take now that they've listened to my presentation? The last type of speech that we will get to do this semester, and that honestly you probably will do a lot in your real life outside of the classroom, is an entertaining speech. The purpose of an entertaining speech is, just like it sounds, to entertain and to make the audience laugh. This could be a toast at a wedding. It could be saying kind words at a friend's birthday party. You may even be asked to be the guest speaker after a dinner and just to share a message with the audience, but mostly to make them laugh. These types of speeches are different than an informative and a persuasive. The goal here is really to cause the audience to feel good. So these three types of speeches are ones that we will focus in on in this course. What I'd like to do now is talk to you about the three key parts of every single presentation, whether it's an informal or a formal one. In every presentation, there needs to be an introduction. And the goal of this introduction is to tell the audience what you're going to tell them. It's the preview to the movie. It's telling them what they should expect or what's to come, and perhaps even creating a little bit of intrigue and interest. Then, once you have previewed for the audience where we're going, that's when we get to the body of the speech. And that's about 85% of the presentation. This is where you start to do the telling and actually inform them or persuade them. Finally, we've got the conclusion. I will teach you later in the semester some strategies for briefly concluding your presentation. But the key here and the goal here is that you are telling them what you've told them. You remind the audience of the message that you've communicated in the body. Now, I'm willing to bet some of you are thinking that sounds really repetitive. But here's the thing. Writing and delivering a speech are similar in some ways, but they're different in a lot of ways as well. If the writer writes something that's perhaps confusing to a reader, the reader can go back over and over and over that text until they've really understood what the writer meant. They can also go and look up different resources and look up a word to find out why did the author choose to use that word there. But a speaker doesn't have that luxury. There's a one-shot chance to really communicate that message clearly to the listener. And so that's why we kind of build in a repetitive structure in the speech so that we reinforce to the audience what they're supposed to get from our speech. If your audience if they remember what you talked about 48 hours later, I think that you've been a successful speaker. Listening is a skill that we don't get a lot of training in. In addition, even on our very best days, when we want to hear the message, we're fully engaged and we feel good, most people only remember about 20% of what they heard 48 hours later. So if you give a speech on how important it is to include fruit in your diet, and I remember that 48 hours later, you're doing great, okay? Now, lastly, let's focus our attention on the dimensions of a speech. This is something I've shared with you in class before, but it's important. The three dimensions are the content of the presentation, the structure of the presentation, and then lastly, your delivery. The content is the message. It's what you want to communicate to your audience. And I've encouraged you to really choose something that speaks to your passions. That's important because it'll show through in your presentation. But you really want to think carefully about how are you going to package that content? How are you going to make sure that you present ideas in a way that it's logical and it moves smoothly from point to point? We will spend quite a bit of time talking about structure in the next couple of lessons. Lastly, you are going to work hard to prepare a beautiful speech, but now it's time to deliver it to a live audience. We'll talk more specifically about delivery techniques and how you can communicate your message well after you've prepared it. But all three of these are really important parts of any presentation. Now, the last thing I would like to do before I leave you for today is I want to share with you what I believe are characteristics of excellent presentations. And I'd like you to think about how you can incorporate these into your own presentations, and I'd also like you to think about what you would add to the list. So let's begin with my first criteria. I think excellent speakers are incredibly clear with their message, and I think they also present a message that is relevant to their listeners. Here's what I mean by this. All of us have wonderful thoughts up here, but we have a hard time sometimes communicating clearly what we mean to the receiver of our message. I think excellent speakers are very, very clear, and the audience feels fully confident that they understood what the speaker intended to communicate. In addition, you really want to reach the people that you're talking to. So I think that excellent speakers choose topics that are relevant to the lives of their listeners, and they tell them directly how it's relevant. How will my speech benefit you? And what are you going to get from it? Here's the practical value for you, okay? So that's one characteristic. Another one is that a speaker seeks to connect with the audience. They seek to find some kind of common ground or common interest. And they create this idea that we're alike. It's not me and you, speaker and audience, it's us. And that's definitely a skill that comes with time. But you want to think about, what do you have in common with your audience, and how can you use that to really build camaraderie with them? I think also effective presenters speak conversationally. Adults don't like to be talked at, and that's important to know. So we want to make sure that when we present, we've got our plan, we've got it all thought through, but that we're speaking with them as if we're having just a one-on-one organized conversation. This really seeks to engage the listener and draw them in, and I think it's what excellent speakers do. They don't talk at the audience, they talk with them. They don't sound scripted, they sound conversational. Also, excellent presentations support their points thoroughly, have enough supporting material, and in addition, they also use a variety of supporting material. So you may want to include some really powerful statistics and facts and studies that support the points that you want to make. You should also try to include perhaps some personal stories. Tell us how you're personally connected to your topic. Tell us why it matters to you. Storytelling really does draw people in, and it's effective supporting material. You might also want to use an analogy or an illustration to help us understand a concept a little better. Butterflies in your stomach are really it's really an illustration. We don't actually have animals, insects flying around inside of our stomachs when we feel anxious, but it helps us understand how we do physiologically feel when we have to give a speech. So incorporate a variety of different types of supporting materials into your presentations. That way you really draw in all listeners, and you really do help your audience to understand. I think excellent presentations also start strong. They let the audience know and captivate their interest from the very beginning. And then lastly, they finish strong. So these are some qualities that I think embody an excellent presentation, and I would like to see you all incorporate them into yours. Again though, think about the ones that you would add to this list, because I'm willing to bet you can come up with some excellent qualities of effective presenters as well. Good luck!